All right, so today we are talking about The 4 Hour Body by Tim Ferriss. One of the reasons I really like this book is I think it just broadly applies to a bunch of different people, bunch of different age groups, body types, lifestyle, whatever it may be. Um, a lot of people have tried a lot of different diets. Keto, intermittent fasting, calorie restriction, Atkins, Weight Watchers, and a lot of it, a lot of people have success on whatever they've tried, and a lot of people still coming to the doctor saying, I have tried everything and I cannot move the needle. I just think that this book has a really good niche for people that have tried other things. It's a little bit of a different perspective, and the best part about it is all about doing the least to get the most out of the changes that you're making. So let's talk more about it. Tim Ferriss is a bit of a hacker. His first book, 4 Hour Work Week, was about how to develop systems that are kind of out of the realm of what we would consider normal in order to make sure that you could put in the minimum effective amount of work to get the most positive benefit. So 4 Hour Body, in a lot of ways, is no different. We're trying to find the right things to eat, the right exercises to do, and the right supplements to take in order to get the most positive change out of the least amount of work. Because honestly, nobody has time to cook all the nicest foods, exercise all of the time, and still lead their busy life and take care of kids and family and all this stuff and be on the road and work. So it's really important to maybe have something in your back pocket that is a little bit different, that takes a little bit of pressure off of you, that you can still see results. And by results, what we're mostly talking about, I think he does a good job of illustrating in this book. Most of the time when we're talking about weight loss, we're actually talking about, I want to burn fat, I want to gain muscle, and I want to feel better and look better in my clothes and how I feel about myself. And the weight is not really part of that equation, right? And he talks about a good job of talking about this idea of the weight swap. You just want to lose fat, gain muscle. You may not actually change anything on the scale when you step on and off from where you started, but if you drop a size in your clothes, you start to feel better. It's like a whole different deal. So a lot of times we oversimplify it and just look at the scale. That's absolutely can set people up for failure. So if that is you, don't worry about it. We need to understand that gaining lean muscle is totally important to your longevity, increasing your basal metabolic rate, things like that, and can cause some stalling out on the scale, but that should discourage you. So today we're going to talk about kind of what I'd consider the 3 pillars of the 4 Hour Body: food, exercise, supplements. The fourth one, which I think is really important, and I almost think it's not the fourth one, it's like step 0 because of how important it is good sleep. We've talked on this channel about how to get better sleep, and there's 100 different ways to do that. Everybody's different, but one thing you need to consider before making any sort of change in your life in order to lose fat, gain muscle, feel better, do more, you need to start looking at the sleep, because all of these things are going to be much harder to do if you're sleep deprived or have low quality sleep, non-restorative sleep. And also, you're going to get more out of these changes if you can restore your natural sleep rhythm and get more high quality sleep. So let's get into the first one, the food part of the 4 Hour Body. We're mainly talking about what he calls the slow carb diet. The main principle here is that you have removed all of your sticky, starchy carbs, which you've probably heard 100 times in the doctor's office. These foods absolutely can be part of your diet in some normal scenario and be okay. We know that to be true. But as far as his approach for getting the most out of the least amount of change, if you pull those out of the diet and really focus on eating meat, legumes as a source of protein, and pushing a lot of green, leafy vegetables, that is going to give you the most impact. The other thing that he kind of talks about here is really trying to minimize the fruit. Now, a lot of people, even kind of the carnivore space, are adding fruit and honey, things like these. When he wrote this book, he's saying keep that out of it. He's putting that almost in the category with the sticky, starchy carbs, white rice, bread, pastas, things like that. So you're really trying to focus on increasing meat, legumes, and green vegetables in the diet. And from a protein perspective, the only other rules in this diet is you want to eat a protein-rich breakfast within the first 30 minutes of awakening. You want to eat 3-4 meals a day, maybe 4 hours apart, and you want to try and get 20 grams of protein at least in those meals. Now, he doesn't talk a lot about calorie restriction or anything like that, but the goal behind pushing the protein to 20 grams at least per meal is the idea that this is going to give your body the nutrition to sustain your lean muscle mass, and which is going to in turn increase your basal metabolic rate, which can help you burn fat without having to overly worry about calories. The other thing that's probably worth mentioning, and we may do a whole other video on this on the channel, is the reason to avoid those other sticky, starchy carbs is this idea about insulin. We talk a lot about insulin in this practice. It's definitely important. Anytime somebody's going to talk about gaining muscle or losing fat, we need to know what your insulin levels are doing. And one of the reasons for removing those rice, pasta, breads is we want to focus on foods that are not going to stimulate a tremendous amount of insulin production, which is going to knock you out of fat burn mode, for lack of a better term. So if you're going to eat carbohydrate, this is why he calls it the slow carb diet. You want to be focusing on foods that are have a glycemic index that is favorable to preventing insulin spikes that are going to be long, sustained, and most of the time these are vegetables that have a considerable amount of fiber. The only other really thing to note from a high yield perspective about what the diet looks like on the 4-hour body, this is interesting. I think patients really, really would love this to know. One of the biggest parts of 4-hour body is you have to have a cheat day. So once a week, he is saying absolutely don't worry about any of the rules. Eat whatever you want. And every day during the week, if you think of something that you want to binge on, crave on, wait until your cheat day. Write it down, put it on your cheat day, because if you eat a ton of calories and a ton of whatever you want one day a week, it actually has a paradoxical effect on how your thyroid hormone is converted to more active hormone in the tissue, which then in turn leads to more prolonged, sustained trajectory toward fat burn and weight loss. So I think that this is a really powerful tool for patients who are killing themselves 7 days a week, trying to eat really, really particular. If you open up 1 day a week on the 4-hour body to say, I'm going to eat whatever I want, you may actually see more gains long term. You don't want to weigh around that period of time. You may not see that change, but over time, adding in 1 day that is totally unrestricted, you may see big benefits. All right, so now we're going to talk about exercise on the 4-hour body. I think this is one of the best parts of this book, and it's certainly, and maybe that's because I lean toward this, it's one of my personal bias. I think a lot of people really get discouraged with trying to change their diet and lifestyle, burn fat, gain muscle, look better and feel better. They really get discouraged when they go to the gym all the time and they're on the treadmill and they're doing the machines and they're doing everything they're supposed to do and they can't see any results. And so I think the 4-hour body taps into some of this and gives people that if that's you, if that's your story, can give you an alternative to what you have been doing. One of the principles here is that if we're talking about the difference between performance or muscle gain, there's a total difference. But if you were just talking about gaining muscle tissue, gaining muscle mass, feeling better about how you look, we're really talking about doing a exercise for 80 seconds. This seems to be the magic number in the muscles that if you hold a sustained contraction in a muscle or do an exercise for 80 seconds, you're going to get the biggest benefit out of gaining muscle from that exercise. You can do exercises that you arbitrarily come up with the sets and the reps, and you go, okay, I'm going to do 3 by 10, I'm going to do 5 by 5. There's certainly a place for all those things, but if your one goal is to go to the gym, do the least amount of stuff, and look the best, what you need to be focusing on is this Tim Ferriss 80-second rule. And kind of to tie into that, a lot of folks probably go to the gym too much. And what happens is you're spending a lot of time on the treadmill, probably not in the right target heart rate, in my opinion. You're sweating all over, and you just go, where are the results? And what happens is a lot of folks go overtrain at the gym. That triggers a certain cascade in their body to then go undo all of the, whether it's caloric restriction or protein, if you're adding protein to the diet. If you over-exercise, you're going to undo all of those things that you just did because your body is going to feel stressed. It's going to feel starved. So one thing he talks about for a body is 3 days a week is probably a really good spot to, no more than 3 days a week is probably a really good spot to plan an exercise program. And you want to go in there and plan the right kind of workouts. And particularly, he highlights a bunch of exercises. If you want to read the book and you want to look at the list of things that he recommends, he's got some workout plans in there. The ones that stick out most to me, if you had to pick a couple exercises to do in order to get the most results for the least amount of input, the ones that stood out for me from his book is, one is the Russian kettlebell swing. And if you've not seen this, go on YouTube and just type in Russian kettlebell swing. You do not have to have a kettlebell. You can do this in the house. You can do this with a gallon of milk or a gallon of water. And the idea here is that you're going to do pretty much a full body exercise that's going to strengthen your posterior muscles, which we all like to have in good shape. And the other thing is he talks about Michelle Obama arms. So if you're doing a Russian kettlebell swing, you're going to have a pretty total body exercise. And again, if you're doing that for 80 seconds, would be my guess, you're going to get a pretty good result from that. And the other one that's worth mentioning is a couple different ab exercises. We know that you can't get six-pack abs just by doing crunches. If you ate 3 pizzas a day and then you go do crunches, you can't get six-pack abs. So we're not talking about that necessarily, but one of the exercises in addition to the Russian kettlebell swing that I really like that he focuses on that is good for men and women is this idea of a side plank. So if you want to add some side planks into your regimen, that's a nice way to strengthen the oblique muscles in the core. If you do it for 80 seconds, or at least build yourself up to an 80-second side plank on each side, that may be an exercise for now 160 seconds every 3-4 days may be a good exercise to add into your regimen if you're not doing so already. The third pillar of the 4-hour body is supplements. Anyone who's not done diet, exercise, total overhaul changes, I think this is the one drawback is these supplements, if you've not taken a bunch of supplements before, maybe you don't like medicine, maybe you don't like supplements, maybe you can't take a medicine 3-4 times a day, this may not be the best. It may feel overwhelming for you at least. So we won't go into great detail about the supplement regimen that he talks about. But again, he's read all these studies. He's asked a bunch of people. He's looked at different cultures and traditionally what they have been doing in order to maintain a healthy metabolism that favors optimal body conditions. So he's kind of took a grab bag of all these things. And he sounds like he's tried other things over the years, and this is what he'd come up with to get the most gains out of the least amount of input. And if you combine these supplements with the diet and with the exercise, the goal is that you're going to lose fat, gain muscle. I will say before we start talking about this, ask your doctor. Always ask your doctor about these things. Even if you read it in a book, even if you don't hear it from me, always ask your doctor about these, because a lot of people do get supplements. They take them at the wrong time. They take the wrong supplements. And sometimes, worst case scenario, you take a supplement that maybe counteracts or interacts with the medicine that you're already taking, and you always want to ask your doctor. And so I'll just highlight a couple here that seem pretty, I think, high yield from a perspective. If you don't want to do a full stack like he's doing, I think you could still get some benefit. But one of the biggest ones is caffeine. He puts a lot of caffeine in the regimen. On a cheat day, he'll put caffeine before a large carbohydrate meal in order to increase metabolism and increase the rate at which your food gets digested. So maybe you don't absorb all of that carbohydrate meal. And he also recommends another supplement that's kind of a green tea byproduct, if you would, or component. And so a lot of this is just trying to get a bit of a stimulant effect from the caffeine, which, depending on the individual, could be somewhat harmful. But if you're already putting caffeine in your body, you're drinking coffee, you're drinking tea, this could be a reasonable option to try and get some more of that, or put it in the right places in the day or right days of the week to make sure that you are burning fat. Interestingly enough, one of the caffeine sources that he does talk about specifically is yerba mate. And this is interesting from a perspective that Ozempic is a pretty popular weight loss medication right now, and does so by working on a receptor called GLP-1. And there has been some research here that says that yerba mate actually knocks on that same receptor, and obviously not at a kind of prescription pharmacologic way, but you can get some activation at the same receptor that Ozempic works on by drinking yerba mate tea, and you're getting the caffeine, which may be helpful. The second one that I think is interesting and super low risk is garlic. He tells this story about one person that had lost a bunch of weight, and just say, "Hey, what have you been doing?" He just eat loads of garlic before every meal. So he found a dose and found a formulation of, you don't have to eat a bunch of garlic. You can just take a supplement in a capsule. It would be available at most health food stores or places that you can buy supplements. And, in addition to some effects that we already know that garlic may have on your cardiovascular health and all these other things, he was using it in the regimen before every meal in order to maximize fat burn. So that to me would be a simple, easy solution to add into either your diet or supplements in order to try and have positive effects on your metabolism, and so you can look better and feel better. And the third one that I really like, which I've personally taken all of these, but the one that I like is this polycosanol. Polycosanol is a byproduct of sugarcane metabolism, and it's some waxy substance that comes out of the cane. And for a long time, these Cuban scientists found this waxy residue and saw that they did a study and found that it could lower LDL, which we call bad cholesterol, which we've talked about being way more complicated. But it also raises HDL, your good cholesterol. And what all of this does is, when we tap into the cholesterol metabolism, we're talking about hormone production, because all of your sex hormones, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, all are, the backbone of those molecules are cholesterol molecules. So I think that the polycosanol is a kind of a nice natural way to, if you're talking about lowering LDL, raising HDL, and looking better, feeling better, losing weight, gaining muscle, I think it's a reasonable option to look into this polycosanol. And the side effect burden would be pretty minimal. They have gone back to those original Cuban studies and say maybe it helped, maybe it didn't. Who's to say? But he puts this in his supplement stack at bedtime, and I think that that's a super good option. So, in summary, here's the Tim Ferriss 4-hour body in less than 60 seconds. You want to make sure that when you wake up, you're eating within the first 30 minutes of the day. You want every meal that you're eating to have at least 20 grams of protein. You want to be eating 3-4 meals a day that are maybe 4 hours apart. You want the foods in that meal to either be protein-rich, beans, meat, careful with nuts, and you want to make sure they're eating plenty of leafy green vegetables. You want to restrict carbohydrates. You want to pull out the sticky, starchy carbohydrates, such as, say, rice, bread, pasta. As far as exercise, you want to focus on small bursts of exercise, 80 seconds of sustained exercise with a couple exercises like the Russian kettlebell swing or side planks in order to maximize your muscle growth. You want to work out no more than 3 times a week so your body can have rest and you're not overtraining. And then there's a host of supplements that can help you maximize your metabolism for fat burn that you should ask your doctor about. So that is the Tim Ferriss for our body.